We'll start smiling now too. All right, live stream, got it. Give me a second. I am checking our Facebook Connect to make sure we are on. And I am moving slow, like a cell phone is. Always like to make sure. All right, we are live. Good evening, everyone. We are back for another meeting of Diverse Minds with Keisha Hamilton. And I'm your host, Keisha Hamilton. I'm super excited to have Dr. Katena Cain, one of my childhood friends, with us tonight. We are about to have an amazing conversation. I hope you all are ready for it. I hope you're tuning in. Like and share this page. And we're going to jump right in. Yay! Thank you so much, Katena. Yes. I'm so excited to have you. You know what I mean? We are going way back.
Way back.
You know, it's so interesting how our stories, kind of journeyed through the years.
Yes.
You know, we kind of disconnected just a little bit because of just our lives moving away, and it came right back together as if we were never apart.
Absolutely. Every time.
Same work,
yes. You know, it's like, it's like one of those friendships that you don't have to talk all the time. But when we get back together, we pick back up where we left off.
Yes.
And, I'm thinking about, like we were talking about earlier, I'm thinking about just how we met. We were so little.
We were so little. Free babies, free marriage,
what I mean? Oh my gosh. So innocent back in the day, right? Oh my goodness. It was what, the fourth grade? Because when did you start attending?
Fourth grade. Yep. I came from Bennett. Third grade was at Bennett, and I came over to Hunt. Yep. Fourth grade. Yep. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yes. Yep. Fourth grade. Yep. I just remember, and like I shared with you a little bit earlier, I was excited when you got there because typically most of my friends were little white kids, right? Because remember how it wasn't school of choice back then. And so the way the lines were drawn, it was drawn to, there were a lot of white families who lived in that area. Yes. And then my family lived in that area as well. So that's where we went. We went to Frost. And, and so I remember telling my mom, just not even looking at myself. I couldn't even see myself as being a brown-skinned girl, right? Because everyone around me, except for my parents and church members, were pretty much white. I danced at a white ballet school. I went to a pretty much predominantly white school. So, I would tell my mom, I wish I had blonde hair and blue eyes, right?
Mercy, I know. Representation,
my mama would look at me like, wow, and then here come Keisha. In the fourth grade, and Keisha, you and I experienced each other, and we had the first Black teacher that changed my entire opinion of my Blackness, right? Yes. So I'm like, I told my mom, I said, Mom, I have a Black friend, and she looks like me, and then my teacher looks like us. I want to be Black now, Blackity, Black.
Right. And our birthdays are the same month, a couple days
birthdays
apart.
Are the 2 days apart from each other. So I always think about that. Even through the years, I thought about my birthday and your birthday a couple days after mine. Yep. Fierce Aries.
Yes. I know. I just thinking about, just going to, like you said, when we were going to Frost, and even coming from Dibble. So I think the lines, the way that were drawn for me, because I lived in a different area, and I think I was kind of like on the edge of, the Frost district at that time. Because like you said, we didn't have school of choice at that time, back then. I'm so glad that they kind of shifted that around to give us some opportunities, and different options, to have. But I remember mostly seeing, like you said, mostly, white students, white teachers. And I remember Mrs. Brock. Yes. Our fourth grade teacher. Yes, she was beautiful. She was amazing. She was absolutely beautiful. and even when just a couple minutes ago when we were talking, you mentioned her French roll. I remember that, her glasses, and her hair was always this. Do you know, when I was probably 15, 16, I began wearing a French roll, and I always would curl my hair a little. And I just thought about that just now. I just remembered, I loved my French roll, and I'm sure it was inspired by her, because she was very inspirational for us as Black little girls. Looking up to our teacher, who had just mostly seen, white teachers and white administrators and white staff. Representation is just everything.
It is everything, and when we talk about representation and even, looking at our commercials and even looking at things like that, folks don't understand how important that is.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And what she poured into us, I even go back in time, and I always will tell you that Mrs. Brock was my favorite teacher. She poured into us little brown girls.
Yes.
Wanted to go to school. It did something for our mental health, even though we didn't. We just felt different. I was happy going to school. Going to her classroom. You were there. She was there. It just did something. So that's why it is absolutely important.
Yeah, I remember even with Ms. Brock, and I'm so glad we got to even have this conversation right now. When I reminisce about her, I remember feeling seen by her. That was probably one of the first experiences while I was in school of feeling, and it's about to get choked up, but feeling seen by her. I remember I almost, I had a little altercation with another student, and I wasn't generally an altercation type student. I was quiet, shy to myself, but largely, I was largely in school alone. My mother just did not know, and so I don't fault her, but she didn't know the value of strong parental engagement. She just didn't have it. So she didn't know. So I was largely alone. But I remember Miss Brock, I had this small altercation, very small, but she just really made me feel seen. She didn't overcharge me it was, and I felt even the discipline that she gave me was so familiar to me. It was so comforting because it was this Black woman who was disciplining me, but I could receive it. I knew the looks that she had on her face, the way she twisted her, or she kind of smacked her lips and stuff. And it was all familiar, but it felt good. Yes. That's amazing when I think about that.
Absolutely.
It's so key to diversity, equity, inclusion, anti-racism, the conversations that we have today, and why we push so hard for it, because seeing ourselves is just everything, it's everything, even, we talk about, and we'll talk about this a little more later on, you're a doctor, Katena Cain, that's who you are. And I just, the idea that I have a sister, of mine, who's a doctor, an accomplished, it does so much for me. It's inspiring, it's uplifting. It makes me want to aspire, and we just need that for our community, for our people, for ourselves. So thank you, thank you,
And Keisha, thank you for saying that. And it's unfortunate, for me to, in the work that I do, I felt that I need to get the doctorate, right?
Yep.
I felt like I needed to have those letters to be credible in the eyes of the people who don't typically see us as credible.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And, it was such a personal journey. When I started this degree, it was, 7-8 years ago, maybe.
Okay.
And I took like 4 sabbaticals. Like I just literally, I was like, I can't do it. Then I had this doctoral advisor. He would just mark every paper up that I had. I was frustrated. I was done. And I don't think he saw me through that lens either. I don't believe he saw me as being credible.
Yes.
And the paper that I wrote and my final work was really specific to poverty to prison pipeline. If you know that I'm a certified Bridges Out of Poverty trainer.
Yes.
I do this work for a living.
Yes.
I move across our communities and I talk to people who live in poverty. I get their concrete experience. Gosh, my husband grew up in poverty.
Yes.
And so my grandmother lived in poverty, and I was with my grandmother 50% of the time.
Wow.
I remember, watching her struggle and going back to the days of the paper food stamps and all of that stuff.
Yes.
That I remember. And then even when we were in grade school and beginning to and more so when we went to Parkside, and I don't know if you remember, but several of the kids who were there who lived in poverty were already engaging in behaviors, right?
I remember. Yes,
it was so devastating to get by, to help their families get by.
Yes.
Right. And how we talk about criminalizing poverty and what that looks like. And I don't know where I was going with that,
Yeah.
but seriously, it's the reason why I leaned that way when I was
Yes.
when I wanted to lean more toward my doctoral work.
Yeah.
But certainly, it
Oh
and
yeah.
it's something that still has changed. It changed me. This
Yes.
work overall changes me. The
Yes.
DEI work changes me. I used to be so safe in rooms talking about equity,
Yes.
diversity, inclusion. I'm like, please come on with it. Let's be courageous together. Let's
Yes.
stretch this rubber band until it pops, right? Let's
Yes.
continue to
Yes.
grow in this work because there's so many inequities out there,
Yes.
Keisha. And
Yes.
I'm looking
Yes.
at our communities now, there's so many inequities. And as you
Yes.
hear the
Yes.
stories of the
Just
people,
compounding, you know what I mean?
right, that are just struggling every
Yes.
single day, and not just struggling in poverty, but with the intersectionality of being Black too.
Yes. Yes. And Black and women, you know, black while working, black while living, you know what I mean?
Black
Just,
while
you know,
living.
all those, yes, all those intersections. Black while
the
going to
lived
school.
experience.
Yes.
Black while going to the grocery store, right?
Yes. 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 I'm so grateful for that. I was thinking, you know, so I love how we started out with just, you know, that first Black teacher and what that meant to us, you know what I mean? And as we went, you know, through junior high, you know, you ended up going to a different school, you know, anything you want to share about that? You know, we went to Parkside together for a while.
We did.
You know, yep. It was Parkside Junior High at the time.
Yes, it was. Remember, it was 7th and 8th only.
Yes, yes. Yes.
But certainly, I think it was a choice. There was a situation that happened. I'm not going to dive
right. That's for a later day. That's for a later day.
That's another conversation that you and I will have offline.
Right.
But there was a situation that happened. And so my parents decided to make the decision to send myself and my sister to, at the time, it was Jackson Catholic Middle School. And integrating there from Parkside was really difficult.
From Parkside,
it was difficult.
Yes.
One, it was a full culture shift, not a complete culture shift, because I still was taking dance classes with predominantly white students, white kids in the community. But going there, it was a culture shock. There were culture shock, religion-wise, culture shock with friends and doing different things, wearing a uniform, right? Yeah. Being Baptist on the weekend, girl, and being Catholic during the week.
Right. Wow. Yes. Mercy. Talk about the chameleon changing his colors, you know.
I had so many questions for my dad, the deacon. I'm telling you what, I'm like, Dad, I don't get this. But you know, it was interesting, but in the long run, I made some of the best friendships. Granted, there was the minutia. Granted, you know, my dad would have to come up to the schools and have to talk to a teacher every once in a while. But I had great friendships. I was on a cheerleading squad there. There were, I had some really cool teachers that, you know, while there were some that were off the chain, there was some that were really good. While there were some students that were off the chain, those are just the ones I stayed away from. I just protected myself in that. But I thank God, you know, that I had my school friends, but I also had my church family. And I had my cousins. You know, who I would kick it with, and you know, who would bring me back down to, hey, Katena, you know,
right, come on, back here with us. Right.
Check yourself.
Some other side is coming out. Bring this other side.
Check yourself.
Send her away, right?
Check yourself. You know, and so it was a good experience, you know. And even now, my daughter, you know, we moved her from the school system, from Jackson Public School System. She's now attending Queens. You know, that was a little bit of a shock for her as well. Doing fine, but still, we want to make sure though that she grows up with a myriad of friends. She's got a diverse circle, and we love it. We make sure that she sticks with the kids that she was with when she was 4 and 5. And mixing her, you know, her friend groups up so that, you know, I believe that people can learn from us too. You know, and they
100%. Yes, 100%. And I think
I
really believe that that's the spirit that really drives anybody who's in diversity, equity, inclusion, anti-racism work. We recognize that, you know, everybody's a beautiful person, you know, or can be, you know what I'm saying? And we can have beautiful relationships with each other, and we should have those relationships. Being exposed to each other, you know, it allows us the opportunity to be able to appreciate each other's, to be able to celebrate each other, to be able to even desire each other's company, you know, that difference that, you know, I was talking to this, I got an opportunity today to go and read at the schools, and I absolutely love it. You know, it's so grounding and just so, just like, okay, and this is why you do what you do. You know, these children, you know, especially, you know, even when we're talking about representation as an African-American woman, I remember individuals coming into my classrooms as an elementary student, and I'm never seeing myself, you know, just the idea that, you know, some of these students kind of touch me, especially those girls, those little Black girls, you know, with beads in their hair and braids, or, you know, and them looking at me, and they're just looking in awe at me. And I am just so humbled all the time. But when I think about, you know, the work of DEI and anti-racism, that is what drives us, this ability for us to be able to say, hey, look, you know, celebrate macaroni and cheese and you know, Spanish food and Thai food, and like this is the idea. You know, it's boring. I was talking to him today. I said, who would want macaroni? Now, I love macaroni. Okay, love me some macaroni. You know what I'm saying? But I don't want macaroni all day, all night. Right. You know, I want some shrimp tacos sometimes. Right. You know what I'm saying? I want some Mexican rice sometimes. You know what I'm saying? I want some different foods at times. You know, but you got to be able to celebrate those cultures. And I really believe that that's what drives, you know, our work around DEI and anti-racism. You know what I mean?
Our work is to take the fear out of what DEI is. Right?
Yes, that too. Because, okay. You know, that part. Okay.
I'm telling you what, right? Because you know that saying, Keisha, you don't know what you don't know.
Yes, yes.
And when people don't know or are uncomfortable around a certain thing, it's because of fear, right?
Yes, yes.
And I love that you said the word exposure, right?
Yes,
Once we can begin exposing ourselves to different cultures, races, religions, gender identities, sexual identities, the more open we'll be, right? The better communication we have. There's a saying that I use all the time when I'm doing my DEI workshops, and I say, human relationship is the sledgehammer that can break through and break down any societal difference. Once we begin getting to know each other, right? And understanding what each person is about, we can start letting our guard down a little bit.
Yes. Right? Relationship is everything.
Relationship,
that's what I like to say. It's everything.
We have more in common than we don't.
Yes, right? We really do. We really do, you know.
And really, as long as we can talk through that line of difference and get through that line of difference and see through the line of difference, we can have better communication.
Yes, right? Yes. Recognizing our humanity, you know what I mean? Recognizing our humanity, you know, those same, like you said, when we're recognizing the similarities that we have, you know, I cry for my children. I celebrate my children. You know, I'm grateful for my parents, you know, just all those things that we share as a human being, you know what I mean? And fear, like you said, it drives so much of it. I love that, you know, you said, you know, that fear, it's what keeps, it's our job to eliminate that. It's our job as DEI anti-racism, you know, educators to say, hey, look, let me take that fear away from you. You know what I mean? You know, even in food, I love to use food, you know, in that conversation, because I'm just like, really, you know, who wants hot dogs all day? And I like hot dogs. Right. I will eat some hot dogs, you know what I'm saying? But who wants that as your only meal? You know, when you can have a smorgasbord of, you know, all this stuff. Like, the only thing I haven't tried is chitlins. You know what I'm saying? I'm just like, no, you know, I'm not doing chitlins. Uh-oh. I have a chitlin lover, my friend over there.
I love you some chitlins. For the hot dog.
I'm totally like, no, they smell bad. I'm not eating them. You know what I'm saying?
Girl, no.
I know I'm have to. You know what? I'm on camera, so I'm not gonna say what I'm not. I ain't gonna say that I'm gonna try them, because when I say it, then I gotta do it. So I ain't saying that. I'm just gonna say, okay, you like them. That's all I'm saying.
I haven't taught my child how to clean them.
I bet your husband, like, I love me some Katena. She know how to make.
He don't like them. He does not eat them. Nope.
He my kind of guy.
He does not eat them. He'll look at those red buckets on the counter and be like,
Too funny.
My favorite.
I know it. Too funny. But, you know, just in that whole scheme of things, just in that DEI work, again, like I said, I really believe that that's what drives us. You know what I mean? That's what drives us. Okay, so we went through kind of like our junior high, you know, high school, you know, even like you said, going through Lumen Christi and that school, developing those beautiful relationships, you know, allowing yourself to see, you know, your humanity. I'm wondering, and I think we probably already kind of talked about that, but I want you to talk a little bit more about how that kind of drove you maybe towards this work in your thesis work with your doctoral studies.
Absolutely. So when I graduated from Lumen, I went to Michigan State, which was another culture shock for me because I was accepted into the Charles Drew Enrichment Lab. And so all of my classes were with students of color. So we were pretty much the gifted and talented students at Michigan State, but we had our own cohort and we were all working toward the STEM programming. So we were all in that area. So some of us were striving to become doctors and some of us were striving to become engineers and all of that. So I went to Michigan State to become a pediatrician.
I just got to pause. I hope that our audience is catching all this Black girl magic that Katena is allowing us to listen in on. You know what I'm saying? Just okay. I just needed to make sure that they was catching all that Black girl magic. Okay, keep going, because I'm receiving it.
Yes. So I went through that, and so another culture shock again for me with being in this space and in these spaces with these beautiful, intelligent Black students and Black instructors and Black advisors.
Wow.
Yes, and it was
heaven.
Like, whoa, this world exists. And then also being at Michigan State with the diversity and the diverse population and just seeing, I mean, even in my larger classes where we were all mixed in together, I mean, just looking around the room and seeing the sea of different races, cultures, creeds, religions, you know, it was amazing and it was beautiful.
Yes. Wow.
And so I think it was my sophomore year, I pledged Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And so I pledged that sorority and I became the chair of the International Programming Committee.
Okay, wow.
So with that, I was able to move across campus and do different programming with different clubs and groups across campus. And then just gaining perspective and being in spaces with so many different and cool people. And I'm like, wait a minute, I have to come back to my city and do something about this.
Yes, wow.
So, you know, life happens and decided at 22, 23 years old, I'm going to get married.
Right. That thing, married.
To someone of a different race. Yes, to someone of a different race than my own. Because look, I'm open. I'm like,
yes. I know about that.
Listen, okay. Culture shock to okay.
Right.
Did not work.
Right, yeah.
And so what that did, it moved me back to this community.
Okay.
Yeah. Be back to this community. I graduated from Michigan State. Did not do well. I guess in my latter part of, but I graduated. I got out of
it. Yep.
Came home.
And you're a doctor today. Okay, just to be clear. Okay, but keep going.
Came back to Jackson, and you know, I started working at the college. And I think that was another good experience for me because I was able to be extremely instrumental in students of color's lives at the college.
Okay.
Again, representation, right?
Yes.
Right. They always want to come see Miss Katena.
Yeah.
And then I was also able to become a co-founder of Sisters of Strength.
Okay, awesome. I did not know that.
College.
Yeah. Wow. That's beautiful.
So did that because we recognized that students of color were not graduating and persisting and continuing on. And so I looked around one day and I said, you know what? There needs to be more systems change work on a different level. But I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to start. I knew I had to advocate for people of color, those who are underrepresented and mistreated and vulnerable in our communities, right? I knew I had to advocate for my students.
Yes.
So that led me to joining the board of Nonprofit Network. Regina came to one of our, she came to one of our big, it was a meeting, I believe it was a Martin Luther King gathering, and she saw me on stage with all of these students of color.
Yes.
And she called me. I think it was funny because the event was on Saturday. She called me on Monday.
Oh, wow.
She's like, I want to sit down with you. Right. Yeah, she was on it. She was like, I want you to be on the board. And I said yes. And she walked me through Nonprofit Network's evolution, because at that time, Nonprofit Network was on an evolution to become more inclusive, equitable, and on a journey of becoming an anti-racist organization.
Wow.
So served on that board for a little bit, and then a job came open. And so she took me out to lunch and she said, you know what? I want you to resign from the board and I want you to apply for this position. And I said, okay.
Right.
So here I am. Right. And what that allowed me to do, Keisha, it allowed me to do what I was doing and advocating and teaching and being that support. It allowed me to take that to a larger scale. And work in Jackson and across the state, and take this work across the state.
Yes.
My second year in to Nonprofit Network, I developed a DEI toolkit that was now being utilized statewide from Michigan Nonprofit Association.
Wow.
Still being utilized.
Awesome.
And it also allowed me to take.
I hope it says Dr. Katena Cain on it too.
It allowed me to take a lot of what I learned, and moving through the work that I was doing at JC, through my doctoral work. It allowed me to use a lot of that in that toolkit. And so that is still being utilized. I do this work. I train and teach this work to hundreds of individuals annually. And again, I do it on a customized basis. I do facilitation with it. I create action plans. I'll go in and I read policies, and I'm like, nope, change it around. It's not equitable, right? You're requiring everyone to have a bank account for direct deposit. There's some people that are on bank, right? So those are things that I go through, policies and procedures, and I look at all of that stuff, and I seek to dismantle inequitable systems in our communities.
Yes, I love that. I love these terms that you're using. Just thinking about, the different spaces that you were in, the culture shock of being among all Black people. When I moved to Georgia for about 5 years, almost the last 5 years of my marriage or so, thereabouts. It was a culture shock because I come from Jackson. Jackson is a predominantly white community. And moving down there, it was really like, oh my, I kind of asked myself before I left, what am I going to do around a bunch of Black people? Like, what do I do? What do I do? But I figured it out, but it was like, but being in that space and seeing billboards, and I always talk about it like that, seeing billboards that had doctors who were Black, dentist offices who were Black, lawyer offices who were Black, as opposed to what we saw so often here in Jackson. I think Jackson's trying to do better with how they portray, Black and brown individuals. But at the time, back in when I was young coming up, we didn't have this type of knowledge and we weren't working in that direction. So what I saw most of the time was just these poor, ashy, nappy-headed Black people on billboards, and it was demoralizing. It really was. But moving down there to Georgia, not knowing exactly how to even move among my own people, aside from my family, because obviously I have a Black family, my cousins and et cetera, but then moving down there and actually being in spaces, my children are biracial. So I, did the whole culture shift as well, because I'm this person, like, I grew up in Christianity. I love everybody, like, and I think that we should continue to maintain that as human beings. We should always be open to receiving and just recognizing human beings, and love is love, or acceptance or whatever it was, because, I'm divorced now, but you know what I'm saying? In those moments, love is that, but, even coming down there as a Black woman with a white husband and, 6 biracial children, but being able to be in that space and just learn from Black women meant so much to me. So many of them were advocates. So many of them were just strong in how they conducted their business, so professional, just so it was just everything to me. And then I think about, even as you continued on and got into the work of Nonprofit Network, just one of the things I think I love most about Black women, and I'm so grateful as well that you even shared what you do for a nonprofit, because I want the audience to know they need to be reaching out to you. You know what I mean? We're oftentimes looking for Black and brown individuals, because on a meeting of diverse minds, I like to tell everyone, you need to be learning from the experts. Now experts don't necessarily mean those who are learned, because you and I know that someone can go to school and, gain some head knowledge, but without that experience and without the willingness to get experience, without the willingness to receive from those who have that experience, and to authentically listen to their voices and take what they're saying and incorporate it and make sure that it's the foundation of your work, you're getting someone who's really not, who's not going to be teaching you what you need to be taught. But so like I said, I'm thankful that you shared that, because you share from one vast experience, not only as an African-American woman, but also being in, having to be in different spaces that required you to expand, that required you to think differently, to imagine more, to be vulnerable. You know what I mean? When you're in a school or in a space of all white people, you know what I'm saying? It takes a lot of not only courage, a strength, but then also a willingness to be vulnerable and say, I'm gonna open up, because there's a lot of hurt from a lack of knowledge. You know what I mean? I don't think it oftentimes I don't believe that oftentimes it's intentional. You know what I mean? But just because it's not intentional, the pain that may be caused by different things that are said, it's still pain, but, but we have to, especially as Black people, be willing to, open up again and say, okay, we'll try it again, and we're always willing. So all of those different spaces that you come from, and then you still maintain Blackness, and this commitment to transformative change versus just transactional or versus just a surface level. You know what I mean? So I'm really grateful, for that's what you've maintained, and that's what you bring to the table when you're out here doing what you do in our community. You know what I mean? So thanks you
so much. No, thank you, because this work is hard. And in 2020, it got really difficult because after the murder of George Floyd, my phone was ringing off the hook for DEI training, right? For folks who wanted to check a box. And my first engagement after all of that went down, and I'm still in tears, and I'm still just in an uproar, just with what was going on with COVID, political system, everything, right? There was an engagement that I clearly underpriced, but I can't even tell you what I said.
Okay. Wow. Wow.
Because, and even doing this work, sometimes we're dealing with our own trauma as being Black women as well. And so sometimes, and not sometimes, but all the time, we require self-care in doing this work. It is hard. It is hard work. It's hard work if you're doing it the correct way.
That's the part.
And still being authentic to who you are, because there's a lot of DEI practitioners out here who are making sure that folks feel comfortable and warm when they leave. Right? My goal is to challenge, stretch. Granted, I'm going to give grace. You give me some grace, right? But this work is ongoing. It is certainly a journey, and it's a journey that involves professional personal monitoring, like checking in on ourselves. Constantly figuring out, hey, why is this fear or bias coming up for me when I'm in certain spaces? Right? And Keisha, I'm going to tell you, I have been in rooms where I've been the only person of color in that room.
Wow.
Standing right there, right? Standing right there. And having folks look at me like I have 5 heads.
Oh,
and it
mercy.
is traumatic sometimes.
Yes.
So for me to come back after that and just breathe, right? It's a lot. And I go back to 2020, and I was doing this work quite a bit, and I would tell Regina, like, give me a strategic plan to do. I want to do something different.
Give me something easy,
Give me something else. Right. And and it's still, it's still challenging, but I'm much more comfortable in that role now. And navigating those things, but it's a lot of hard conversations, Keisha.
Oh yeah. I was thinking about that. Just, you know, when we consider, you know, one, I'm so grateful that you prioritize self-care, you know, so I'm in a few different volunteer groups, and, you know, some of the first things that we've established in there was that we get self-care hours. So we do work. Yeah. And then we say, you know, so you're paying us for this work, but now you're paying us for self-care hours. It can be difficult to imagine and to hear, especially if you're a white person, that it can be traumatic being in a space with all white people, you know, and that's not like to make anyone feel bad or to, you know, or to cause harm, but the actual reality is that, you know, it's sometimes incredibly difficult to be in a room, in a space with white people, you know, and or even people of whiteness, you know, so white culture, you know, those ideologies that are being there. And, you know, and then not knowing if you have a friend in the room, not knowing if you have sprouted a few heads or not, you know, because the way you're looking at me, clearly, you know, something's wrong with me, or being, you know, mistaken for the help, or, you know, or, and sometimes, you know, because my career has not advanced as far as I'm hoping that it will. So as I began my journey into the corporate world, because, you know, I was a stay-at-home mom for so long, I was the help a lot of times in those rooms, you know, and then sometimes the disrespect and the, you know, you know, those, as a human being, those things are just difficult to receive. One of the conversations that I really wanted you to kind of address, as we discussed, because you've been in so many different spaces, was just how can, you know, our, you know, white organizations that are, and they're not getting everything tonight. So just so y'all know, we getting snippets from Katena on purpose. I'm making sure that, because we want you to call her, okay? You know, but how can our organizations prepare themselves, you know, and their employees to receive, you know, Black people, you know, Black teachers, Black, you know, curriculum, you know, that's Black ideology, you know, these ideas that surround DEI and anti-racism. How can they receive? Now, I'm not saying that this is, I'm not saying you always walk into it like this, but what would make walking in, you know, easier?
I typically like to ask, you know, I like to ask questions, right? And a good question to ask is, if you looked like me, would you want to come into your organization? How would your organization treat you if you look like me? Reflect on that, right?
Yes.
And then who does our organization need to be, right?
Yes.
To embrace Black and brown people as they should.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Wow.
So,
I love that.
Right. Yes. If you were to look like me, would you want to go into your organization?
Yeah. Yeah. Even
right. Wow. What would people say to you? How would they treat you? Right. Right. It's almost like to put the shoe on the other foot. Right.
Yes. Yes.
Or walk into my church on Sunday.
Yes.
Right. Yep. How would you feel?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So we really need to flip that around. We really need to flip that around so that folks can be much more inclusive. Right. Yes. And it's not just inclusive and say, yep, we have someone here, we're going to hear you every once in a while. But how are we weaving folks into the mission of our organizations?
Yes.
Into the fabric of our work.
Yes.
Because DEI work is necessary for us to do any nonprofit mission work.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
It is necessary.
Yes. Yes.
Necessary.
Yes.
And if you are not having conversations at your organization about diversity, inclusion, and equity, you really should start.
Yes. Yes. Without a doubt. You know,
the world is changing.
Yeah. Thank God. Thank God that it is changing. You know what I mean? But I love that though. When I think about, you know, like I said, that question, how are we preparing our spaces? But I love that, to allow them to answer that question, because then that takes the pressure off of us as Black and brown people. You know, I need you as a white organization to imagine, you know, what would it be like for you walking into an organization if you look like me?
If you look like me.
And what would you want?
Right.
What would you want that organization to do for you? Or how would you want them to prepare for you? You know, and you come and tell me, you know what I mean? Because it's a thing to walk into an organization that, you know, some are ready for it. And I recognize that it's always going to be the case where some are, you know, we're all in different places along our journey. You know what I mean? Some are on a journey, some are just not gonna get on a journey.
Right.
You know what I mean? And we recognize that that's the nature of humanity. You know what I mean? But that was really important. A really big question. I just felt like, because of all your extensive work in this area, what do organizations need to do? And I love that answer. What do you need to do to receive me?
Absolutely. And organizations should stop hitting the easy button. Right.
Yes.
We post our jobs in all of the same places all the time.
Yes.
Right. We say we want to expand our boards and we want our boards to look like the community we're serving. We want our staff to look like the community we're serving, but we're not being intentional.
Yes.
Right. We're not even looking at the barriers that we're putting up and stopping that from happening. Right.
Yes.
I see one more job posting on Indeed, right?
Right.
There's so many different outlets that could reach different people in our communities, right?
Yes.
And also, let's take a look at marketing materials.
Yes. Ooh, please.
How are we outward facing and how are we displaying people of color on our websites and in our marketing materials, right?
Yes.
Are we always behind the line with a tray at a food pantry?
Right.
Or are we out in front serving? Right.
Yes.
You made a comment about do we always walk around looking ashy and elbows white. We looking like we got powder all on our face. Is that how you're portraying me? Because I see your marketing too, right?
Yes.
Because my child sees your marketing too, and she might say, "Mom, I don't look like that. We don't look like that."
Yep.
So again, check it and really having those conversations internally.
Yes.
Right? At the organizational level.
Yep.
Like, who should we be serving?
Yes.
Right? Are we missing a population because of who we are and what we're doing?
Yeah.
Are we doing focus groups? Are we doing focus groups with community members to see what folks are saying about us as it relates to DEI?
Yes.
Right.
And
are
how
we
much
testing? Our reputation.
Yes. And that takes so much humility, authenticity, honesty.
Yep.
I remember sitting in a room with one of my bosses and, and a bunch of Black people. So I think all the Black people, there were just a few of us. So all, didn't mean a lot, but all that were there. And having that question posed to us that, basically are we coming off in a way that, is kind of like a put off? Is this appropriate how we're engaging or is it causing a barrier?
Right.
And being the lone Black person to say, I want to be honest with you because you're asking that, yes, the way that you present yourself, it's a barrier. It's causing, a drawback, but then of course we have that, the other issue that we won't even really discuss right now, or just, a fear of being authentic for retaliation purposes and et cetera. But, organizations do need to ask themselves, and be willing to hear. And it does take humility and a willingness to say, okay, you know what, let me just receive this, recognizing that even though it's not my intention, if that's still how I'm, showing up in this world, then I have an obligation, if I say I want something different, to do something different. You know what I mean? One of the things I think a theme that kind of keeps coming back to me tonight is just that representation, and the need for it and just everything, in everything and how it really changes how we engage with individuals. We even talked a little bit about just how inclusive you mentioned, how are you incorporating? And I think I love the term incorporating. To me, it just paints a picture of, of not just, because inclusion can be you're invited to the party. And I while I like that, you're invited to the party. To me, incorporated is you've been at the beginning and you are helping to establish what's going to happen in the party. You're helping to pick out the food and the drinks and the music and the decorations and we all have our ideas. So you're not just, we created this space where we made all the decisions as to what it's going to look like.
And then you're in the backyard.
Go back there and you're going, right. You know what I mean? But how important a representation is to the conversation of DEI and why it just matters so much, for us to be in these spaces, learning from DEI professionals, even when I think about it, we can't do this alone, which is why I love, all the vast spaces that you had to work through in life, you know what I mean? From you know, predominantly Black district to predominantly white district, and then to predominantly Black, you know, and then even at Michigan State, just the, you know, you went not just from predominantly Black, but now you've got all kinds of, you know, which is amazing, you know what I mean? But,
absolutely.
You know, yeah, but being able to just to kind of go through those, and then being able to appreciate and celebrate, and then bring all of that with you when you're in these organizations, and really just push for, you know, hey, look, no, we're going to do this and we're going to do it right. You know, I'm showing up in your space. I'm not coming here to, I'm not here to make you feel bad, but I'm also here not here to just make you feel like, you know, we're about to have some hard conversations. You know, welcome to this courageous space. You know what I mean? And let's get it on and pop it together. You know
exactly.
What I mean?
You know, this is not blame or shame work. This is not blame or shame work. We are in the present, where this is relative to where we are at.
Yes.
We can't be afraid to not say something, because we just have, we have to move forward. I always tell folks, it doesn't matter how you acted yesterday. Granted, some people will keep you stuck in space and time. It doesn't matter it does not matter what you said yesterday, how you acted yesterday. What moves forward, what matters is how you move forward. And moving forward differently is the important thing. Even if you're going inch by inch. We should always be seeking to grow, right? We should always be looking to grow and get out of our stuck space, right? Because did I have to interrogate some things that were said important to my value system? Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Right. So I think that we're all poured into differently. And the key is to suspend those negative mental models that we are having and that we have about people who are different than us.
Yes, negative mental models. I love that. You know, it paints a beautiful picture as well. Negative mental models. You know, these ways that we're thinking. I like to talk about it as a lens. You know, these ways that we view life through, which is basically the same thing. That, you know, how are we, you know, viewing things? Why are we, you know, and challenging all those things. You know what I mean? Challenging, you know. Those models, you know what I mean? It's how the world gets better. I love that too. When it comes to DEI and anti-racism work, you know, I like to say on a meeting of diverse minds that, you know, we can't do this alone. You know, we cannot do this alone as just Black people. You know, while we have our own, in our community, different things that we, you know, have to address as a community, you know, when it comes to us as a community engaging with our white brothers and sisters, you know, we can't, and making the world a safe space really for us. And you know what, really for them, you know what I mean? Because the world is not, if it's not safe for us, it's not safe for anyone, you know what I mean? It's just an unsafe space, but making this world a safer space and a courageous space for us all to exist in, we have to do it together, you know what I mean? We
have to, we need our allies. We need our allies that are walking right alongside us in this work, that see us as leaders, that see us as leaders alongside, that will put us up on a billboard and say, you know what, we've been on a billboard long enough. It's time for you, right? So we need that. That's what we need in our communities. People who are willing to say, you know what, I'm gonna step back and step outside of my privilege because I know I have it. I know I have it, and I know you don't have as much as I do. So I'm gonna let you step up a little bit. Right?
That whole scarcity versus abundance mindset, you know what I mean? The idea that, you know, okay, I know you know, I've been here in this space for a long time as far as, you know, as a white person, but I'm letting you have this space now. And I don't, it doesn't take from me now that I'm allowing you to take this space that really you should have, you know what I mean?
Right.
That's a thing, that whole scarcity versus abundance mindset, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. You know, and you know, and people get scared when things get scarce.
Right. Or when they think they are, you know what I mean? When we think about the world, you know, one of the things I love so much about our community, especially as African-American women here in the city of Jackson, is that, you know, we recognize, especially a lot of us Black women, you know, we recognize that, you know, your shine does not take away mine. And I want you to shine, shine, you know, shine. There's enough space in the world for all of our lives to be bright. You know what I mean? You know,
I love that, you know, I absolutely love that. And I love, you know, when I get with you and our friends, and I'm like, you know, it's no competition.
No. No,
we hug each
no.
other. There's no
Yes.
jealousy. It's like we high
No.
five each other. When you win, I
Yes.
win.
Yes,
Right?
yes, yes, yes,
When you're
yes. We
sad, I'm
recognize that.
sad. When you
Yes,
cry, I cry.
yes, yes,
And
yes.
and you know, when we can build like that, when we can build community like that,
Yes.
gosh, that's a beautiful thing.
It is. It's
Beautiful
everything.
thing.
Yeah, it's everything. And it's everything to, again, just the work that we do. And the reason why I keep kind of just bringing or just kind of mentioning the DEI work that we do, because obviously, you know, we talk about DEI and anti-racism on the show.
Yes.
You know, and so this conversation is just key to all those different pieces that are really needed to be successful in DEI work. And DEI work as individuals who are kind of leading the work, and then individuals who are receiving the work. You know what I mean? These are the components that are needed to be successful in this work. We need authentic individuals. We need honest, humble individuals who are willing to be allies, individuals who are willing to say, you know what, let me step aside while you lead, and while I allow you to lead, and while I learn from you and glean from you, you know what I mean? And just so many other things, you know what I mean? Let me imagine how my space, you know, what is it like walking in my space? You know, I mean, let me sit in that in a space myself and really just take in what is it like to walk in here? What am I asking them to do? And what type of, you know, and asking themselves, and how should what can I do, one, to make it better? But then also, what am I doing to compensate to ensure that they are safe? You know, and always pay money. Okay, let me be clear about that. We spend money and bam, ladder. Just, you know, but then also, but aside from money, you know what I mean, make sure it's handsomely, you know, a compensation package is handsome. But aside from that, you know, what conversations do I need to have as an employer with my VPs, my cabinet, my middle management, my supervisors, as I'm bringing in, you know, individuals to, you know, engage with us, you know what I mean? And it's a thing, you know what I mean?
I always talk about policies, practices.
Yes.
Gosh, that can be the biggest barrier.
Yes.
In bringing in a person of color.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Your practices, your policies, things that, I mean, even sometimes I think about some of the policies that I read and the barriers that are up for folks, right?
Yes.
Who may have traditionally been marginalized, lived in poverty, whatever the case may be, right?
Yes. Yep.
But you know, even as I think about, and even the journey that I've even been on in my educationally, I still wasn't afforded some of the certifications and some of the things. I couldn't do an unpaid internship. Right?
Yes.
Some of these jobs are requiring, right? I couldn't do that, right? I had to work. I had to work as a college student. There's just so many things that, as we look at how we're writing our applications and the job postings we put out there, and our practices and policies, and who is sitting at the front desk, even right when you walk into my office, right? You're serving 95% people of color, and your entire staff is white.
One of the things I found, I think, with policies and things that are policies, so the written policy, and even in law, you know, legislation, you know, while I recognize that there are some things that definitely need to be changed, you know, some wording that needs to be changed, even in our policies, some definitely wording that needs to be changed. A lot of times the wording is actually pretty good. The thing that I think I find that's the most difficult is the interpretation. And that's related directly to the representation.
Correct.
Who's reading it? Like, not only who's sitting at that desk, yes, 100%, who's receiving people, but then who is interpreting this policy? You know what I mean? A lot of times, because of a lack of exposure, you know, a lack of being informed on DEI and anti-racism policies and ideologies and lenses to see life through, people who are interpreting these practices, and they just do it not even fully consciously recognizing that, you know what, I interpreted this way for white individuals, and I interpret it this way for Black individuals. So for this one, I can, you know, whatever the policy says this, and I'm going to use it this way and allow you and afford you some grace and whatever else, mercy that needs to be. And then for you, you know, I'm following the letter of the law, and then also even adding to what's been written that isn't even there. You know what I mean? That's why another reason why I feel like, with representation, it's everything. You know, we need us sitting at those tables, those decisions. And this is why I love decision-making tables, because if we're not in those spaces to challenge, you know what I mean, individuals who are, you know, who are at the table, then those people who are sitting at the desk, they are empowered to, you know, to continue not recognizing how they're showing up and engaging with individuals of different races differently. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Just, you know.
When, you know, you have to think about it too. When you bring diversity to a table, board table, search committee table, policy review team, whatever, there's going to be some conflict and some creative tension.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. I love
and
that.
A lot of the time we don't diversify our tables because we like the status quo.
Yes.
And if we do diversify our tables, we expect everyone to operate as the status quo, or
right.
we're going to get upset, or we're going to expect, let's say this, Keisha, you and I have been, you know, we've been serving on the policy review committee, the church down the street. And we've been on this committee together for 12 years. Right?
Yes. Oh, that one. Yes.
Somebody else comes in. They challenge what we're doing.
Yes.
What are we going to do?
Right.
We're going to get mad. We're going to get an attitude.
It's been working this way. Just fall in line.
It's been working this way. Fall in line. We're going to say that, right?
Yes.
Because when you bring in someone new and we're stuck, right?
Yes.
Not willing to listen, not really open to embracing a new perspective, we're going to be stuck. And I think that's what we need to get away from at our tables, at our, you know, at our committee meetings, staff, whatever it looks like. We have to get away from the status quo. We will never grow as institutions, as organizations. We'll be stagnant. We're gonna have a lot of people that are mad. We're gonna have.
You're speaking my language.
We're just gonna. But when we think about the end goal, though, when we talk DEI, the end goal is the mission. We're servicing the mission of our organizations, and we are doing the people who are working there and serving and who are being served, we're doing them a disservice. By not engaging in conflict creatively. By not engaging, because there's going to be conflict. Conflict moves organizations. I love conflict because it moves us forward. It moves us forward. I don't want to sit in the room with a bunch of head bobbers.
Oh, please no.
But let's move forward, right? Conflict, creative conflict, and creative tension can move organizations forward. And I preach that to the day I'm out of here.
Yes, I love that. Thank you so much. And we're about to close because we're at almost an hour. An hour passes quickly when you're having fun. You know what I'm saying? Right?
Yes.
This has been an amazing conversation.
Absolutely.
One of the things you just said that I kind of think was a great space to end on was just that the status quo, we're moving away from the status quo. You know what I mean? That's what DEI and anti-racism work also, you know, that foundational piece. It's the foundational piece. It's why we say diversify. It's why we say let's be equitable. It's why we say be inclusive. It's why we say embrace anti-racism so that you can move away from the status quo. Thank you so much, Dr. Katena Cain. Thank you. And I just got to say it again because I hope they caught that word, Dr. Katena Cain. Thank you so much. Any last words you want to share with us, or?
No, I just want you to, I want to thank you for having me on today. Anytime I can talk about anything DEI.
I know.
Absolutely. So, and for those individuals out there looking at this and want to reach out, please feel free. Certainly, this is something we can help you get unstuck with. We do coaching and consulting. We can get your organization unstuck. So just call on us for that.
Yes, Nonprofit Network is absolutely amazing. You know, like Katena said, reach out to her. She is amazing. You've heard the conversation tonight. You've heard, you know, her philosophy and the experience that she's gained from doing this work for so many years. You know, we're talking 20 plus years.
So many years. I'll be 10 at Nonprofit Network this year. 10 years at Nonprofit Network.
And you were doing this before you came to Nonprofit Network. You know, so all these years. So yes, definitely reach out. Thank you so much for joining another meeting with Diverse Minds with Keisha Hamilton. I'm grateful to have my childhood friend, Dr. Katena Cain, with us. Look forward to having more conversations with her, and feel free to reach out, as she mentioned, and continue to follow the show. Thank you so much. Bye. Thank you so much.